I'm making this video, and I'm making this video as a personal defense of my own individual system, my individual spending decisions, and I just signed up back up for Medium basically, and a dollar is not a vote, so I gave him $5 to get access to this article, and I'm reading it and pirating it for my audience, and I will use ExpressVPN to upload it so that I can't be held accountable for that piracy. But here we go. A dollar is not a vote. You know, you hear it and I'm saying this for a reason because of the fact that I personally am tired of hearing my spending decisions criticized or that people that feel comfortable coming after my spending decisions. The problem with your line of argumentation, and and that's why I'm attacking the dollar democracy because I don't want anybody to be able to come at me that way ever again. You hear it in the media from politicians and maybe even your family members. It's become a common expression, but it's not just that. People really believe that when they spend a dollar or a euro or a pound, they can influence the products sold by major companies and the views expressed by their powerful executives. There is obviously a grain of truth to this, or as she puts it, some truth to this. If enough people act collectively, it can push a company to make a change. But is that really due to their spending decisions or are other factors involved? Consider what happens when a major boycott occurs. Sure, some people might change their individual spending, their purchasing decisions, but there's also a lot of negative media attention. But there's also a lot of negative media attention on the company's product or stance. It's the decisions of the individual purchases or the media scrutiny that ultimately forces the change. I would argue the latter. We're told this lie about outsized power, the outside power of our spending for an important reason. And in the 1970s, there was a significant shift in our culture, along with political and economic systems, towards a set of values that de emphasized collective power and elevated the role of the individual. You know, the notion that, and the people that are behind this and are telling me these lies do it for a reason. There's a bias and they want to sell it to me, but they're lying to me, and they have a highly motivated reason to lie to me. So they're lying to me because of the fact that they've got an individual incentive not to. Fuck them. They're lying. The notion that personal spending decisions have economic impacts comes out of that individualist logic. If you choose to buy a more ethical product, you're sending a signal to the market, whatever it is, which will combine with the purchasing decisions of other individuals to change the production decisions of corporations. It's a great myth, but it's not the way the economy really works. Not only is the economy not a democracy, but your individual purchase decisions means next to nothing in the big scheme of things, unless you're a billionaire or very close to it. Who has the power? Unlike in the political system where everybody can cast a single ballot, that's not the case in the economy. If a dollar is a vote, then some groups of people have far more ballots than other groups. If we consider the United States, white people will have far more ballots than black people and other minorities. Men will have more ballots than women, and obviously the rich will have far, far, far more than the poor. And if we treat the economy as a democracy, consider that the growing inequality means that for the fairness of that democracy. Wages of average workers have stagnated since 1978. Those of CEOs have soared by nearly 1,000%, and inequality has reached levels not seen since the years leading up to the Great Depression. Yet after the most recent financial crash, the vast majority of the gains went to the top 1%, while the middle class is being decimated across the country as a small few join the upper income brackets, but far more fall into poverty. This is not the picture of an economic democracy, but rather a country where an ultra wealthy elite is further consolidating its power after previously smashing the organs of working people's collective power, their unions, and embarking on a project to marketize every aspect of their lives while holding average consumers constant as average incomes constant, even as the prices of housing, education, healthcare, transportation, and everything else rose, in many cases at rates far higher than inflation. Companies serve wealthy spenders. Consider this if you still think you're purchasing your spend. Consider this if you still think your spending decisions as an average person in America really make a difference. The economy of the United States and those of many other developed nations depends on consumption. But who does the consuming? Where are the personal spending dollars coming from? As of 2012, the top 20% of earners were responsible for 61% of all personal spending, up 53% from just 20 years earlier. Breaking out just the top 5% shows the inequality in spending is even worse, as they are responsible for 38% of all spending, an increase of 11% since 1992. Meanwhile, 39% of personal spending comes from the bottom 80%, nearly equal to that of the top 5%. So who spending do you think really matters? Which customers are companies trying to target? Do they want the business of the 80% or of the 20%? In the New York Times article that reported these figures is very clear. The effects of this phenomenon are now rippling through one sector after another in the American economy, from retailers and restaurants to hotels, casinos, and even appliance makers. Translation: companies are changing their business model, but it's not because of the spending decisions of average people. They're adjusting to target the wealth that's being increasingly concentrated in the hands of the richest people. There are plenty of examples of this, but consider a very recent one: Apple's new iPhone lineup. After previously toying with a $10,000 Apple Watch, Apple has now pushed the price of its flagship iPhone XS to between $1,000 to $1,500, while its entry-level iPhone XR starts at $750, still higher than the iPhone price just a few years ago. And this isn't like the Mac lineup where there's long been a distinction between consumers and professionals because the pro needs more power to complete their task. The two levels of the iPhone have been essentially the same internal specifications. The iPhone XR is even rated as having the longest battery life of the three phones, with the difference being the premium camera, screen, and materials used for the pricier iPhone XS. As iPhone sales have leveled off, Apple is taking advantage of its wealthier consumer base to increase the average selling price and the profit it makes on every device sold. Inequality is not inevitable, as you've also been lied to. It's comforting to believe that your spending matters, but that if you buy a more ethical product, that it will make a difference. But unless you're super rich, there's a very slim chance that that's the reality. The people in power who benefit from the status quo have an incentive to keep making you feel that way. It helps legitimize the extreme individualism that has taken hold over the past several decades, but it also makes the economy seem fairer when it's anything but. We don't live in a just world, and it's settled, and it's final. If you disagree, you have lied to yourself. Period. End of story. I hold the absolute truth. There's only one valid angle on reality, and it is mine. If you disagree, you have lied to yourself. Period. End of story. The reality is that the rich control a greater share of the national income, even at the peak of inequality in the 1920s, and as a result, they're the ones with the true economic power. The individual spending decisions of average people mean little to major companies when they can make so much more by targeting the elite. A dollar is not a vote, and people need to recognize that fact as a way to understand how truly unfair and unequal the economic system has become over the last few decades. High levels of inequality are not inevitable until we stop electing governments that slash the taxes of the rich by cutting the public services that help everyone else and allow major companies to keep paying low wages while their profits soar. Nothing will change. So, to the people who disagree, get fucked. There's no truth in you. I am the way, the truth, and the light, and this is the only truth. All other angles are inherently invalid.